before you kill like the last building of the computer, someone would untick the allegiance button. So when you kill that last building on the computer, the game's supposed to end because you're all aligned. But when someone unclicks that button, the game doesn't end because now the game still thinks that, oh, there's an enemy on the field somewhere, and there was no easy way to tell who it was. So
didn't they lose vision on you though?
So they had two separate buttons. They had one for vision and one for allegiance. You could actually keep the vision button on, but unclick the allegiance button. So the term was called backstabbing, which a lot of people abbreviated to BSing. So as soon as you kill like that last computer building, people would be like, okay, who's BSing? Because it's like the game didn't end. So now it's like you got people pointing fingers at each other, being like, I think it's this guy. He's definitely, he's building up all these cannons and stuff. Like, it's got to be him. And a lot of the time it's like people would be blowing each other up and completely take him out of the game, and the game still wouldn't end. So it wasn't him. So it's like,
see, it's Among Us. That's what it is. It's the same exact game.
Welcome to the Cable Club. We're a retro video gaming podcast where three guys look at three different races and decide which one is better. And we're linking up to talk about the games you love and rank them. This is episode number 38. We're your hosts. I'm Steve.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Don.
And we're here with our guest, Mike from the Old Switcharoo Podcast. Say hi, Mike.
Hello.
This week's episode is our 12th League episode, and the entry is StarCraft Brood War.
12th.
So get ready.
12th.
Yeah, 12th. Well, I'm sorry. Get ready to upload data from us to you, but first, set the mood. The year is 1998, and you and a couple of your friends are eating lunch at your local mall food court. Orange chicken and crab rangoon was on the menu for you. You and the guys were just cutting up, talking about the same stuff you always did. Video games. You just received your first PC this year, and you were looking for some suggestions on which game you might be able to play with them. They all look at you with the same look in their eyes, and at the same time, in full unison, say, StarCraft. You've heard them talking about it, but you weren't quite sure. If they all recommended it, though, you'll give it a shot. You stop by your local GameSpot and pick it up. Once you get home, you load it up, and magic unfolded. You jumped on AOL and started emailing your friends, asking questions upon questions. This game was huge, and there was so much you could do. Which race should you play? The human Terrans with tanks and marines? Or the Zerg bugs with their hydralisks and zerglings? Or the powerful Protoss with their zealots and dragoons? Your mind swirled around for not just a whole summer, but this became a part of you as a gamer. Build orders, unit compositional counters, defensive unit placement, cheese strategies, macro, micro, all of it. This was a game you were born to play. This is StarCraft.
Nice, dude. I remember first seeing this game, like when I was a fifth grader, and this kid brought it into school and he put it on the classroom computer, and he like played it like during like study time. And I remember just like watching it and like how futuristic it looked, and like just like back then it looked beautiful. It still does today. And I remember like falling in love with it just by looking at it, and I was like, I need to play this. So I'm excited for this episode.
That is not too far to how I was introduced to this, which was that in high school, so a couple years after it had been out, someone had installed this on all the computers in the small computer lab that the school newspaper had. And so when we were not working, whether or not either because like we were waiting deadlines and things like that, or just because we didn't have anything to do, or we should have been doing stuff and weren't, was playing a lot of StarCraft, and actually a lot of also of GL Tron, which was like light cycle racing, which was and like those were the two games on all those computers.
Nice.
Yeah, I had some friends who were interested in it. I had a girlfriend who was really good at it. I think all she wanted was for me to play with her, but I just was so terrible and not interested. Because we had like a relic of a computer. I don't think I could have run it, so I just didn't get my hopes up.
So I played StarCraft for the first time at my friend's house, and I only played like 1 or 2 maps at the time, but I was like so much more interested in what everything could do, and like, you know, what the different units could do and all that stuff, more so than like playing the game. Like the whole like theory crafting behind it was like way more interesting to me at the time. But StarCraft 2 came out, and I like fell in head first. Like I played it so much, like on ladder and the missions, and Dan and I would team up for 2v2 ladder, and we played and played and played and played.
Yeah.
Really, really addicting. And I felt a little bit of that this week. So this is going to go on my to-beat list because I wasn't able to, obviously wasn't able to beat this game in 2 weeks, both expansions. So anyway, I have some announcements before we get to talking more about StarCraft. So announcements. If you haven't yet, go check out our website at www.thecableclubpodcast.com. It's your center for everything Cable Club. From there, you can join the Discord. You can check us out on any listening platforms where you find podcasts, just in case you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to it on a podcast, try switching it up and go check out the separate ways that we can get this content out there. And don't forget to leave a kind rating or review while you do it. It really gets us jazzed and keeps the show going. And also, you can follow along the Retro Game League over there. You can see the league standings, see where the games are, and get excited for at the end of this league, we're going to call a vote to see which of the games win in their respective cups. And we're going to dole out some prizes there, too. Very exciting. And on that subject, the league, which we are talking about today, if you, listener, would like to participate in this league, go ahead and drop us an email at thecableclubpodcast@gmail.com, or join the Discord in our wonderful growing group of gaming friends and talk to us there. We're pretty open about having people on the show. We're booked out a little while longer, but we have some slots left this year to get in there. We're trying to play 25 games and sort them into cups. So, and this is only game number 12. Halfway through, guys.
Almost there.
As Bon Jovi would say.
We're halfway there.
Fear of promoting ourselves too long, I'm going to kick it over to Dan for question of the week.
All right. Question of the week. So Mike's question was, what's the first video game where user-created and distributed content, not just house rules or something, was a driving factor of what you enjoyed in that game? Mods, levels, designs, anything like that.
I held off on this question because for me, StarCraft is that answer.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, and that is because I was realizing this after the question when I was thinking about it a bit more. There are a whole bunch of custom campaigns that like people have made that are single-player campaigns that you can do that can get fairly intensive. But for me, it was a lot of the online multiplayer, but not the strict... It wasn't the standard stuff. It was the weird custom games that people had created. And so the one that has stuck with me the strongest was that there was a Helm's Deep map where you have 2 players as the Zerg playing all the orcs and everything attacking, and then the other 6 players are spread out between either controlling large numbers of units that are meant to be the elves, meant to be the humans, or individual characters. So like Gimli is a fire bat with these giant plumes of these giant flamethrowers.
Toss me,
and just
but don't
super
tell the elf.
Yeah, and so it's so great, and it was just the amount of time of that, and it would be lengthy map unless you were doing really badly, got stuck behind lines or something, because it was fairly balanced to this is going to be very close. It's going to come down to the end of who actually can you survive this onslaught or not.
Can you survive until Gandalf the White shows up?
Pretty much with I think Protoss.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's got to be just
not
like
100% on that,
right?
And then the other part to that being, I realized after the fact, I think this was my introduction to tower defense games.
Makes sense.
Because there was some modes that were designed for that were tower defense. And I hadn't even had that click when I'd asked that question. It wasn't until I was playing stuff and kind of going over some of the other things, and I was trying to find information about the Helm's Deep map, and someone had mentioned something else as a custom map. I'm like, wait, I do remember that. That's tower defense. I did not realize that I had played tower defense that far back.
Yeah. You could do a lot of crazy things with the campaign editor. Like, I think that's where all these maps originated from. You know, making it from the campaign editor. And I remember as a kid playing that and having tons of fun. You know, I would make my maps here, and there was nothing extravagant like the people do on the online and uploaded it. But like, yeah, I just remember going through all the options and stuff. It's like you can literally make a whole game just through that campaign editor.
Well, and they kind of did, right? Only not with StarCraft, but they used like a Warcraft mod to create Dota, right? And Warcraft wasn't too far off of StarCraft at that point in time, right? They were both RTSs. Blizzard probably ran on a similar engine, I would imagine.
Yeah,
no, they were out there.
And I think that was like the original, like, sort of demonstration of that game mode was done in StarCraft.
And that was something that they brought to that they brought in with Brood War, right? Was the ability to do these custom maps. And I was saving this for later, but they had, you know, basically invented MOBAs with the Aeon of Strife game mode, which was like, I mean, it's a MOBA. If you've ever played League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, Pokemon Unite, those types of games are called MOBAs. And before they were a thing, somebody made a custom map with mods, and you played as like an assortment of StarCraft units. I remember playing as the Probe, thinking it was hilarious. I could run around as like a hero gatherer unit. And I remember you'd level up and you'd pick from skill trees, and you got like this ability where you could just like lob carriers in a direction basically as far as they would go before somebody would shoot them down. Just really, really fun, really good time. And you know, you're trying to go up and you're trying to kill the enemy base, right? So
that makes me wonder. I mean, probably not, but I know with like Heroes of the Storm, they actually do have a probe hero, and it's called Probius. I think it's Probius.
Yeah, Probius is my boy.
Really?
Dude, I seriously wonder if that's the hero unit's name in Aeon of Strife. That'd be
I don't remember if
hilarious.
they had names, but I know you could just play as a probe.
I have to look that up, man. That would be wild.
That actually might be the inspiration for it.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's what I thought when you were talking about it.
So I don't have a lot of experience with games that have fan-made content. I kind of steered away from like the one I think that would have hit me the most would have been like Mario Maker, but I steered away from it because I saw some content pretty early on of just the sheer crazy death traps that people are just creating, and I was like, yeah, I can probably skip that one. I'm going to cheat a little bit and say that I as like a young adult, got into some ROM hacks for various games that I really liked. Like there's some really good Mario 3 ROM hacks out there that are they're an attempt by their creators to be a more challenging but still balanced experience. Sometimes they're more balanced than the base game is. But then there's like a bunch of Pokemon ones which are really hit or miss. But one that sticks out to me is one called Emerald Rogue, which is a Pokemon roguelike. If anyone's familiar with that genre, it's a genre that you go through a set journey, usually a set number of rounds of something, and each run is different because the abilities you get throughout the run are usually randomized in some way. And then when you die, you start the run over. And sometimes in roguelikes, there are things you can do to be stronger out of the get-go. Think games like Dead Cells, like Slay the Spire, would be some of the oldest, most popular examples of those games out there. And of course the game Rogue, which, after which the genre is named, right? So yeah. Just different ROM hacks, I'd say, would be my most experience with it. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me as well, it's like I haven't really messed around with like a ton of mods, but like I have messed with some ROM hacks like Pokemon Brown, stuff like that.
Pokemon Brown was lit, wasn't it?
Yeah, dude. I didn't beat it, but it was good.
Oh my god, Steve, you played it too?
Yeah.
Oh man, how did we all stumble on this crappy little ROM hack?
Well, you
It's
suggested
actually
it.
really good.
You suggested it to me.
Oh,
but
did I?
They have wind type or whatever?
No, it's just the base game, but they actually like split physical and special moves, and they give certain Pokemon like Tangela evolutions that didn't have it in Gen 1.
I remember it being Gen 1, but I thought like there was another type that was added in.
I don't I'm not sure. I don't think so. But
Yeah, I gotta go back and beat that someday. But another game I was thinking of was I know you guys aren't big on the Elder Scrolls games, but like Morrowind. Especially today, like you kind of have to play it with mods nowadays because the game is just so ancient that like you just need mods to like bring it up to speed. But like once you get like all that set up, like you can add like some other mods. Like you could add like a whole different scenario. You could add like different islands and all this other stuff. And I know they have like mods for like the Skyrim engine, but like you can play it in Morrowind. So like I don't know, just like the
like
Elder
somebody
Scrolls,
went in and like custom built
the whole Morrowind
Wind
and
in
Skyrim engine. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of went back and forth there, but like, yeah, like I would just say Elder Scrolls in general, like has a huge modding scene. If you ever was stuck with one game forever, like you could probably find like infinite content with just like with any of those Elder Scrolls games.
Skyrim feels like one of those ones that I only hear people talk about with like, you have to play with a certain number of mods on there. Because these make it better or add things and all that. And the idea of just playing the base one seems less
so like that actually reminds me. So like Skyrim actually added like I think it was a whole new game, but like they added like a mod feature where they added mods of their own, where you could like go into like this menu and you could like tick or untick like certain mods that you wanted. Like they had like a survival mod and stuff like that. So you had to like eat, drink, and sleep. It was pretty fun. I mean, I didn't really mess around with it too much, but like, yeah, the modding scene is absolutely insane in the Elder Scrolls genre.
It's always more fun when the game itself embraces the modding community.
Yeah.
Sometimes they hate that it exists openly, or they actively shut it down.
Right.
Before I answer, in Pokemon Brown, there are 6 new types.
Really?
I must have not gotten to that part. I beat it.
Abnormal,
and I didn't notice
gas,
anything.
sound, tri, wind, and wood. Like, I knew that there was like some moves weren't super effective like they were supposed to be in it, and I was like, what is going on? But as far as question of the week goes, I haven't played a lot of games that do modding and user content, but like the first one that I can remember playing that allowed me to mess around in was like Super Smash Bros. Brawl's level design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just build a cage match so you can't die, and you get yourselves up to like 800%, and you just fly around until eventually the game breaks and you still die.
Yeah.
It like the collision stops because you're going flying so fast.
What a way to break that game. Oh, I actually want to plug one more. So there's a game out there. It's an indie game, and it's in the style of like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. So it's a tactical RPG, and it's called Wildermyth. And it's roguelike also. So when you start a journey, I'd say journeys last about maybe 2 to 3 hours. So not super long, right? When you start a journey, you get a handful of characters, and they go through changes, like permanent changes. Like maybe your characters will be they go through magical puberty, where they might be walking in the woods or something, and they encounter some sort of spirit, and you have to sacrifice one of your people to it, or else you'll all die. But instead of getting sacrificed in the traditional sense, they might come back with like superpowers or something. And then after you build these characters up and you go play other journeys, you'll see familiar faces, like, because throughout the game you'll recruit other characters. You always start with a new set of characters, but you'll see characters from the past adventures you've done. And the entire thing, all the stories, all the events, all the fights, is all like community-driven writing. It's called Wildermyth. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it definitely sounds. I'll have to check it out someday. All right, so some answers that we had from our community.
Happy's the best.
Yeah, he is.
Sorry,
Happy's
Mike.
answer was, I think I'm gonna have to say WWF Attitude on the N64. It had the first extensive create a wrestler function, and I remember my friends and me printing out specs for making our favorite wrestlers that were not on the game. This was early in the days of online community and pretty much groundbreaking to a 10, 11-year-old. If you're talking about the community directly contributing to the game, I enjoy the created maps in the early Halo games. Yeah, I never messed around with like Halo created maps. I could only imagine how wonky that could be.
Anytime you open these gates, there's, you find out that there's a couple different kinds of people in the world.
For sure. All right. Hux. Well, it's StarCraft week. Clearly, it's StarCraft, right? At least for me. I remember spending the majority of my time online playing custom maps on Battle.net, usually RPGs or things. In particular, reliving the Freezer or Boo arcs of DBZ with StarCraft sprites as DBZ characters. In quotes, open RPGs. I remember someone recreated the Warcraft 3 demo as a StarCraft map. Oh, and lots of Lord of the Ring games. All kinds of creative maps, which is how Dota and League of Legends all were invented. StarCraft Brood War is not only one of the first and biggest esports games ever and important to history of the esports, it's not an exaggeration to say that without Brood War, they may not have been esports at all.
So, Mike, if you didn't know, and I don't know how you would, but Hux is very upset that you got to pick a game before he did because he was going to pick this one. So he'll eventually be on the league, but yeah, I think he just decided to type his piece into the question of the week there.
I did not realize I'd gotten to this one first because I felt like I was doing an outside pick to begin with.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know this was out of my radar. Like, I wasn't even thinking about StarCraft, but like on my pick, I definitely would have picked something like StarCraft. I love this game as a kid.
That's because we're not part of the PC master race.
Yeah.
The three of us, generally speaking, we have dabbled, but something tells me Mike has more than dabbled in the PC game.
That's why I thought I was going the outside pick, because I think everything up to this has been console primarily.
Yeah,
I think so, actually.
we have a slant.
All right. Last but not least, Danko Misty. Gonna cheat a bit here and go with my most impactful rather than first. It's an indie game from the Xbox 360 called Murder Miners. It's an FPS that plays a lot like Halo. However, at a glance, it's reminiscent of Minecraft. Everything is built out of blocks. There was plenty of small but delicate competitive community that I became a part of. I made countless maps and learned a lot about it along the way, a few which were used in some tournaments. I look back on Murder Miners about as fondly as my Halo 3 days. That's almost a tongue twister.
Murder Miner.
I've actually never heard of Murder Miners. Have you guys?
No.
No, I'm presuming based off the Minecraft comparison that it's miners like people that excavate and not like...
Yeah, I don't know what's
Yeah,
going
I've never
on.
heard
Anyway,
of Mystery Miners.
Murder Miners, right?
Murder Miners, that one.
Get it right,
Murder
God.
Miners.
Sorry, Danko.
Well, you've probably never heard of Wildermyth either, right? So,
Nope.
yeah, we're
Have not.
reaching into the deep here. You guys ready to gather yourselves up and talk about StarCraft?
In the rear with the gear.
As is tradition for this part of the show, we're going to talk about the game with its submitter, Mike. He's going to give us an overview. Mike, pretend I don't know at all. What is StarCraft?
All right, so in March of 1998, Blizzard was coming off of having released Warcraft 2, and so they released StarCraft, which that year was the best-selling PC game, over 1.5 million copies sold. And it was a real-time strategy game with one of the new things it introduced to real-time strategy, or at least what made it break from a lot of other real-time strategy, was that instead of simply having two factions, this was actually going to have three different races. It wasn't that they had to kind of balance. And so those were the technological and psionic Protoss, the insectual Zerg, and the terrestrial Terrans. And so each of those operates with their own unique mechanics, that it's not simply we've swapped out the units, we've swapped out the colors, we've swapped out the designs, but like the mechanics on how they work overall is different. The game started off with 3 chapters that had you play 10 missions with each race. And then by the end of 1998, they released Brood War, which added an additional 27 missions to the game for single player. It also added 6 more units and did some balance changes to the initial game, with missions that were designed to be a bit more tied in with story, as well as were assessed at the time, right, either as a good or bad thing, as also being more difficult. And so the game has not just this story mode, it's got the multiplayer that allowed for both local and online multiplayer. It had all these custom campaigns, custom maps that people could create, and a legacy that meant that in 2021, it was added to the World Video Game Hall of Fame. And more cultural legacy thing, in 2022, right before Russia invaded Ukraine, the buildup of Russian volunteers that were untrained but were just trying to be gathered in mass to overwhelm Ukraine was actually described from within Ukraine as a Zerg rush, which then had to then be explained as to what kind of a comment that meant.
It's the world we're living in. So Brood War being the expansion, was this the first time that this practice was really done? Like, I know games had sequels, Sonic and Knuckles, I guess you might consider to be sort of an expansion, but like, I don't know, was this the first time they were like, oh, and this is an add-on for the game you already have that makes it better?
I'm not really sure. I never really thought of it, but like, yeah, I would think so. Like, gaming, like, in 1998 was still kind of in its infancy, really.
No, Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Was that 95?
That's basically an expansion.
I mean, you would have had to buy a CD back in the day, right? I mean, I think you could download a digital copy in 1998. You just would have been there for 5 days, eating up the phone line, doing that. But
yeah,
and I was reading this week that this was completely responsible for like North Korea's entire, or South Korea's entire esports scene. That they took it to a level that not many countries did. And they actually like funded a national league, like a sports team, because of this game.
Listen,
yeah, they love StarCraft.
Still, StarCraft 1 has some of the biggest prize pools in history.
South Korea has a channel on their cable television that is only StarCraft.
Yeah, it's wild. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But
it really is.
yeah, the significance of this game, I feel like can't be understated. So I don't know what hits you guys first about this game, but I think, especially at the time, back in 1998, I felt like the graphics of the cutscenes, this and Diablo 2, the graphics of the cutscenes that Blizzard was cranking out at the time, I felt were several generations ahead of what I was seeing on the console, because that's what I played with, right? It's kind of like my first exposure.
Yeah, I thought the graphics, like when I first laid eyes on it, I thought they were absolutely beautiful. Like just like the UI of like the Zerg, Terran, and Protoss, of like where you see the units and stuff like that. Like just like the overlay, I thought it was like it literally looked futuristic to me, which that's what they were going for, was sci-fi. But like, yeah, I remember that kid playing it in 5th grade, and I was just like, oh man, I want to play this game so bad.
I like all the little pictures. Like when you click on a unit, you get like the little heads there, and they talk and stuff. It's
yeah,
extra thing. I felt like they didn't have
or
to do.
Or like the little sprite too, like the wireframe, and it showed like when they got damaged, it would be like if they were healthy, it would be green and then yellow and then red. Even though it didn't really mean anything, but like back then, it was just like, I don't know. I remember seeing that, like, oh, like this Zelda has like a pretty badly damaged arm and whatnot. It was just flavor, but it was pretty cool. And as far as like races go, like I thought they did such a good job, like with like being humans, being like a insect race, and like an alien race. Like to this day, I couldn't even really think of like a 4th race. Like they covered like so much with those 3 races that like I can't even picture, like I can't even imagine having like a 4th race if they ever did. It's like, what the heck would it even be? They like covered everything.
Yeah, and I think like even just the way the workers work highlights the difference between how those 3 work as both conceptually and gameplay is, and it makes it like it's hard to switch from playing one race to another in this game because of it is, like, if you're playing as the Terran, the human-like ones, your workers are actively constructing things. You've got to wait for them to finish building one thing, they move on, they build the next. But then when you get to the more technologically advanced Protoss, the worker just has to go somewhere, warp something in, and that worker can go and move on. Your bigger constraint is that you need to have the almost infamous pylons so that you have coverage to build it. But the worker is just saying warp something in and then continues onward. And then the Zerg, their workers straight up morph into things. And so you actively consume the worker. And it's really interesting that all three of those are things that really change how you have to be thinking about how you're playing the game, because it's not just this worker builds different things.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that like just the base worker is just like how different they are for each race. It's like even like the pros, it's like they usually dedicate themselves to one race because it's just like, you know, each race is just so vastly different that like, you know, if you try to play this game competitively, it's just like there is just so much to learn from a single race that like typically people just stick to one. And I just find it like awesome that like with like the Zerg, for example, you essentially like sacrifice a worker, but in turn, your buildings are cheaper. So it's like you get the cost of the worker, but like your buildings are also cheaper. So it's kind of in line with like the other races. So it's not like you're sacrificing it for no reason. It all plays hand in hand.
Yeah, and then the other part that makes it for Zerg is like you're only allowed to build 3 units per hatchery at a time, and they take the eggs, and all of your army units versus all of your worker units all come from the same building, and it's the only race you have to replace your workers because, like you guys said, it turns into the building. So eventually you have to sprinkle in a couple drones in, or else you're just going to sacrifice your economy, and it's just like another layer of something to think about that the other two don't have to think about.
This is one of the few things that I feel like I can actually speak to, because I really only got to the Terran and the Zergs, but like the Terran, they have the ability to build anywhere. So just anywhere a building fits, it can fit there. And it's even taken a step further where you can build a building and then most of their buildings can actually fly. So like you can build something in one place and then scoot it over to, you know, a more advantageous place later. So they really get the freedom of that. I don't know, maybe their buildings are solar powered or something. I don't know how we humans got away without laying down cables, but we did. And then the Zerg are restricted to this type of land that they I don't know, emit or regurgitate or whatever.
Their hatchery makes it.
It's called creep. Well, other buildings make it too. Like anytime you build a building on the edge of the creep, it'll expand it. And then there are actual like creep buildings that expand large. But like you have to start in a corner of the map. You can't just. It's really hard to send a worker off to go become something else anywhere you want without starting with a hatchery. And then even taking a step further, what Steve said about the way that because the hatchery is your base. And if you lose that base, it's really hard to recover, basically, because the base is how your workers gather minerals and gas, which are the two currencies. So every race has a base, but the Zerg one is the only one where you're incentivized to build a second one, like right on top of the other one, which would be a big mistake as a Terran player, and I think also as a Protoss player.
Correct.
Not too bad for a Terran player because you can always lift off and move it to an expansion.
But you wouldn't leave it there, obviously.
No.
But the Zerg, you're like incentivized to do it because it like births X amount of larvae over a certain period of time, and
you'll be pooling your money.
So you need to develop units faster.
Yeah, the hatchery kind of like functions as like kind of like two things, where it's like it's also like where you gather your minerals, but it's also your barracks essentially. So you know, late game you kind of want a ton of them. So that's how the Zerg play is. They're a swarm race. They just basically outnumber you with their numbers. So basically you'll send in all your Zerglings, Hydralisks, you know, and then when they die, you can just, you know, mass produce that same army again with your larva, because if you have like a ton of hatcheries, you can basically have that army up and running again within seconds, and that's just how they play.
Yeah, and
It's
unlike
amazing what you
Terran,
can do when you don't have to send your citizens to school for 12 years.
yeah, well, you know, Terran is like you need to build a lot of redundancy if you're going to replace the army. Like one barracks late game, which makes your Marines like your basic units, is not going to fly. You need to make like 3, sometimes 4 of them to get, and to, you know, just to keep the pressure on, to keep replenishing your army. But like Dan was saying about Zerg, you know, if you have all the necessary components built to switch different units, you know, if you use the basic unit Zergling and something like that doesn't work, and then the enemy's coming in for a crackback, and you can see, you know, what kind of units are on the way, you can just hatch an entire army of the counterplay unit, you know, and it'll be ready and waiting for them very quickly.
Yeah,
so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, with the Zerg, like, yeah, I kind of want to expand on that. So they have like overlords. That's their supply. You
Oh
can
yeah,
have
there's
them,
also supply. I forgot. That's another currency. Yeah.
yeah. So like you can have them like littered throughout the map if you really wanted to, and that's kind of like your vision of the map. And I want to double back on creep for a little bit, because like it's kind of like, you know, I guess you could call it like a handicap in a way, because it's like you're limited to building on the creep. But what it does that like pylons don't do, because you have to build on pylons, is creep also gives you vision. So anywhere that you have creep, it eliminates the fog of war. So like if you have creep somewhere, like, you know, in the middle of the map somewhere or something, you know, sometimes it'll pick up an enemy because it's like they are in range of that creep. So like it's kind of like a disadvantage, but it also is advantageous too, because it gives you like, it eliminates some fog of war.
It also gives you away too, though. The enemy starts walking on creep. They're like, oh yeah, I know something's up.
I don't know if it's in StarCraft 1, but I'm fairly certain in StarCraft 2, Zerg units are faster on creep.
Yeah, it's not in StarCraft 1, unfortunately, but that is definitely a welcome change in StarCraft 2, as it should be, I feel like. You know, it's like kind of like it's like kind of like home field advantage.
I kind of don't feel like the Zerg need more ways to be fast.
Yeah, especially if you have like I know this is StarCraft 2, but I kind of want to say it is like having the speed boost on Zerglings on creep.
Yeah,
Damn,
metabolic
dude.
boost.
Damn.
Not
Well,
only
you could
that,
just straight up make them faster in the first game anyway. Like there's
yeah, it's the
something
same
that makes them
metabolic
fast.
boost.
Yeah. So they're just
That's
fast when they're
something
not on creep too.
I want to
Yeah.
touch on is upgrades. In this game, upgrades are insanely important to keep on the same level as your opponent's units. Like, if you have 100 units and they have an upgrade that your opponent's 100 units don't have, you're going to wipe the floor with them.
Yeah,
So, like, there are so
absolutely.
many different kinds of buildings in this game, and all of them do different things. They're like almost like skill trees to unlock certain units that you're allowed to create, but they also give abilities for all of the different, like almost every single unit has an upgrade or an ability or something you can get through a building, and you spend your minerals and your gas, which is like your currency that your workers gather, on them. And it's a really simple but advanced game. Like everything makes sense, but like there's so much to it that what's the term? It's like the valley of learning or whatever, like is huge.
Yeah. And some of the upgrades, while they may seem minor, can be the deciding factor of you winning a battle or not. Like, for example, just like the simple speed boost of the Zerglings can be the make or break of the Zerglings getting the surround on the siege tanks. You know, because if they didn't have that speed boost, chances are they might not even get there before they all get blown up. But if you had the speed boost, you know, since the siege tank kind of has like a slow like wind up attack, it takes like 3 seconds per shot. They can get in there, and then once they're close enough, the siege tank can't even shoot anymore because they have to be a certain distance for them to actually attack. So just like minor upgrades, even like the +1 to attack and defense, like those go a long way in a match.
Let's talk a little bit about our favorites. I think mine far and away is the stim pack. It's not close. For some reason, drugs make the machine gun on the Marines shoot faster than it does normally. But
So
whatever, it's awesome.
So the stim pack is one of my favorite too. Basically what it does is it takes 10 health from your infantry units and it makes them attack 50% faster. And if you have
And
a
run
bunch
faster.
and run faster, correct. So like if you have like say 50 Marines, running faster and on top of attacking 50% faster, they're gonna melt everything in its path.
Even just 6. I had 6 kill a battle cruiser.
Yeah.
Like there were only 3 left when they were done killing the battle cruiser, but just that amount of attack and speed is just crazy. And a battle cruiser, for everyone that doesn't know, is a really high end Terran unit that you get. I think it's probably the end of a skill tree.
Right.
Like
You know what
capstone unit.
made like Marines like insane in Brood War was having medics.
Yeah, because
So
they
like
heal off the damage.
yeah, so like the drawbacks of the stin pack was losing life, but the medic can remedy that by healing them back up. It's just
I don't know.
absolutely insane.
They get one-shotted a lot of times anyway, so the extra 10 health was like, okay, now I just hit you faster.
It's because you're not putting on the defensive boosts.
Yeah.
Upgrades. What's your favorite upgrade, Mike?
I'm not sure I have a specific upgrade that's coming to mind. I think this is upgrade-like. The only thing keep coming to my head is the Protoss have like this tankish unit, like a Reaver, which looks like a giant metal caterpillar kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
That you can buy. You use minerals to basically arm it with these little
Scarabs.
these scarabs that it will fire out, and it has a nice range. So actually, I think one of the missions I just did was basically I just put got a couple of those close enough to the Zerg, and just kept at a distance and just annihilated my way through.
Yeah, they're
units protecting close up.
They remind me of siege tanks.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're Protoss siege tanks.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
They operate a little differently.
Yeah, the big difference is you don't get There's a very super satisfying moment that I still remember from like 20 years ago. Actually, at Jaymo's house, we were playing StarCraft in 2 different rooms. I don't think I was playing. I don't think he was playing. So I think this was a friend that this happened to. But with the siege tanks, since the Reavers, those scarabs have to find a path to what they're hitting. Siege tanks don't. And on a multiplayer map, I had set up siege tanks. I think it was me, or I was watching whoever did this. I know I was not in the room on the receiving end of this, because it was dropping siege tanks above somebody's base. And because the terrain's not too fancy, but you do kind of have levels of terrain. And if you are on a lower level, you can't really see the upper level unless you're being attacked, if you're for ground units. And so siege tanks set up on a higher level right by a base do not become visible if the person doesn't have anything in the air until they start opening fire. And the first volley wiped out all the workers, and we just heard a scream from the other room. Because at that point it was just like, that's very bad now, and I'm not recovering. Like, that was the game is over. It's just a question of time now.
I will never financially recover from this.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the tactics, right? So the as a player, you're trying to build up enough workers so you can keep replacing minerals and keep spending them. Like, this whole game is getting and spending, and then you learn to do that efficiently. But there gets to be this cluster that they call the mineral line of units just walking back and forth from like these crystal mines back to your base, and that is like such a vulnerable spot. And I'd say that's unanimous for all the races. It's not specific to Terran, Zerg, or
and I
Protoss.
It's the backbone of your army, really. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, and I think
it's gut-wrenching when something open fires on them.
It's also just, I can't think of other games too much like this that really lean as heavily into the fact that those minerals run out. I think you still get gas at a low level, but the minerals, you just deplete them. And so the longer the game goes, the fewer resources are actively available.
Yeah.
So actually, the best multiplayer game I ever played of StarCraft, in terms of just like it has stuck with me, was me versus a Protoss player. I can't remember if this started off 1-on-1, but it definitely ended up 1-on-1. And I play as Terran because I was not that good. And the biggest thing with Terran buildings lifting up is it is really easy to retreat if you realize you're going to lose your base. You still may not win, but at least you have more of a chance than just watching all your buildings slowly destroyed when you can't do anything. I was losing, as I usually was in that kind of multiplayer, and I had backed up to an island that was off the main area of land, and because all the buildings fly, I had an island full of missile turrets and supply depots, maybe one or two other buildings on the ground, and the command center down there. Every other building I had that I needed to access parts of that tech tree are floating behind the island up against the edge of the map, and I am running the drop ships around the perimeter of the map to not be seen over to the only minerals left on the map, so that I can keep rebuilding like wraiths and missile turrets as this, because it just created this weird like Battle of Britain thing where he couldn't, for a long stretch, he couldn't really crack through what I had on the island because it was all missiles and he had to come in by air. And eventually, I think this was like a 2-hour game or something. Because at that point, I was getting the only minerals left on the map and the other person didn't realize I was doing that because it's utterly insane on a certain level to imagine that entire process.
I was going to say, so you're flying SCVs in these drop ships? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I'm
That
micromanaging this.
It takes so long.
Yeah.
Now there's a term for this. They call it long distance mining. And this is another level. Well, it's not transporting, but like if your natural expansion, if your like main base breaks, you can still have your workers grabbing from your natural expansion mineral line and bringing it to your main base, and they call it long distance mining until you get a new base up on your natural. But this is like even like this is like international.
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
Long distance mining,
and the other part was I managed to hold him off so much longer than I think was expected, that, especially because it did sort of matter for rankings and stuff, at the very end, before the final killing blow, was like a good job and offered me an alliance so that we'd both count as having won that match.
Yeah.
Because I think it was disrespect. It was like, I cannot believe that you've done this for 2 hours to me. And I think on like multiplayer maps, I had a couple times where like an ally would betray me, where it's supposed to be a 4 versus 4, and one person would decide I'm going to kill everybody and forget to turn off shared vision, and I'd just be flying Terran buildings around the map, avoiding their units. And that was the kind of person who was like, if you can outlast them like 5 minutes, they will give up because they were just trying to be a jerk and they don't really feel like putting up with this. And it's like, no, I will be more stubborn than you. So Terran was very good for time. Retreat.
Since I don't have kids yet.
I actually this week I had a moment similar, or in a similar situation where I needed to was on an island that was heavily guarded. So I took a building and I flew it over the island, and because the buildings have so many more hit points than all the rest of your units, they started targeting the building immediately, and I was able to drop units in and get a foothold over there. They were just killing my drop ships over and over again. That's a common
breaching the gap against computers.
Yeah, you
fly a building in the way.
Pick up a barracks and just lob it. Send it over.
They also have good vision, believe it or not, like the buildings.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
those
you get
windows.
a good picture.
Yeah.
Those windows.
So my favorite upgrade, because we totally skipped me, is adrenal glands.
Oh, I was gonna say that one too, dude. Oh,
adrenal glands are so awesome. They're you have to get a hive in Zerg, and they decrease your attack. They lower your attack, or I guess raise your attack rate to 0.3 seconds. Your Zerglings attack 3 times in a second with the adrenal glands. It's just, I love it.
So like it's just funny because it's like if you have like one single Zergling that has like the 3 upgrades, like to attack in defense, or I guess in this case defense doesn't really matter, but has like the adrenal glands, and you just see it just like wailing on like a pylon by itself. You'll be amazed how fast a single Zergling is whittling down this like pylon by himself. It's a sight to see.
Yeah, we're giving a lot of love to Terran and Zerg here, but can we let's circle on Protoss for a second. So,
no.
Yeah, right.
I love Protoss. I mean,
they're all right, I guess. Cannon spam, you know.
Yeah, well, the cannon, the famous cannon rush.
Yeah, so their whole thing is it's a little less restrictive than the Zerg, but they have to build within a radius of these things called pylons, and it's basically electricity. It has to be connected in order to work. So if the enemy shoots your pylon, blows it up first, everything else around it just basically shuts down. It doesn't work anymore.
Right.
But it's a pretty big radius, and I think people usually build them in clusters, you know, or build several around, so it's really hard to kind of pinpoint one while getting, you know, completely destroyed by defenses and things.
Yeah, a lot of times people will build them in between buildings so that you can't get surrounds on the pylons.
Yeah, and then also you kind of want a lot of them anyways because it's also your supply for Protoss.
Oh, that's right. It's 2 and 1, right? Yeah, it's your supply. So yeah, we alluded to it a little bit, but there's this metric called supply, and it's the amount of units you can have. If you're not familiar with RTSs, like I'm not really. I think they all have this, right? Like Warcraft must have some kind of supply
I'm sure
thing,
it does.
right?
I'm not like huge on Warcraft. I think it's like food or something, like or you need like farms or something.
So
I know the more recent ones like Stellaris has that.
Yeah, it has to, right? Or else, you know, I feel like that's a major part of the strategy. But so Terrans, their supply is the supply depot. It's a shed. It doesn't do anything.
He's easily the worst of the three, in my opinion.
Well, yeah.
It's better in StarCraft too.
Yeah.
So then the Zerg have overlords. So the Zerg species story is like it's a hive mind, basically. Or I think it's a few hive minds, right? And they occasionally fight with each other.
The Overmind.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's a StarCraft 2 thing. I'm mixing up my lore.
Yeah,
but,
the Overlord is the Overlord's quite broken, I feel
it's
like.
a flying unit that
goes
around, gives you supply.
Yeah, I mean it's
a
slow
dropship too, right?
Yeah. So it's very slow in the beginning. You have to like upgrade it to get it up to speed, but it can turn into a drop ship. You can increase its vision. You can make it faster. It's a detector, so it can detect cloaked units. It's really good.
And in StarCraft 2, you can make them spew out creep.
Yeah, they can give you some path there. And then the Protoss have those pylons, which are pretty essential to your build.
Yeah, and I think the supply also touches into sort of how to think about each of the races in terms of how much, because its supply kind of has a quantization there for what kind of units you have. It's like the Marine, the Standard, of the Terran is just like one supply unit. But then when you go to the Protoss, the Zealots are 2. So each of them takes up 2. So they're stronger, but they are therefore more costly. And I think with the Zerg, you get a pair of Zerglings, I think, out of...
That's right.
2 for 1 special.
Yeah. And so you can really see how each of those, how the Terran kind of is the middle approach there.
The Terran is really where a new player... Well, so the game will dictate that you start with the Terran campaign, but becoming familiar with this game and seeing what the other races are about, I think it's good to start with Terran. That's not to say it's weaker than the other races, because I don't believe it is statistically. But
no, I was looking on the
easiest
ladder.
one to get a handle on, I think.
I was looking at the rankings on the remaster, and there's like a healthy list of all 3 races.
Yeah, they did an insane job at balancing them.
Yeah, like really, really good job on the balancing. Like any race can be a monster.
I guess they were probably patching it, like online game and all.
Yeah, I think it's a live service game, right? So they're constantly making tweaks. But that being said, even like throughout the bleakest moments where something was blatantly outrageous, there were still pro players playing different races. Like, so I don't know. It's still, I mean, there's only 3. We're making it sound like there's a million, but I don't know. Each race is so deep. There's just so much going on there.
Yeah.
I think it's that thing. Like, I don't think you could add more and still keep them so distinct.
Yeah. I'm with Dan, who said earlier that he's thought about, what would a fourth race even look like? And I used to think 3 was not a lot, and I was surprised when the second game came out that there was no fourth race, and but still, like, brainstorming it, I think it really does kind of cover everything.
That's
really.
why
Zelnaga.
Yeah, I mean, I actually I was thinking of that like earlier today. If there was a fourth race, it would be the Zelnaga, but that's kind of like a combination of like Zerglings and Protoss, or Zerg and Protoss together.
Well, the Zerg are engineered, right? Or at least the form that we see.
Technically, all 3 are engineered by the Zelnaga.
Well, right, but that we're saying that like the Zerg in its current form wasn't naturally occurring. Like it was Terran intervention that made
in
them.
StarCraft 2, there's
it gets into it.
Yeah, in StarCraft 2, they have a what's called the Primal Zerg, which I don't think the Zelnaga had a hand in.
Yeah, you'd assume it's just the species that the Terrans used to create the modern form Zerg.
Yeah.
But hey, let's talk about the story a little bit. This is the first time I really got to experience the story. Like I had played StarCraft 2 before I played 1. I know I'm very bad for that, very naughty, but it was cool to see the events that were only described in the second one, like the backstabbing of Kerrigan.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That led into that, and her becoming the Queen of Blades, and then I don't know who's familiar with the Protoss stuff, because I'm really that's like over my head.
I can talk about some of the Protoss stuff. So, after you finish the Terran and the Zerg parts of the campaign, in the original story for the Protoss, you mostly play as Tassadar, who is a High Templar, and you're they all have weird names, like Cerebrit for Zerg, and you're like a adjudicator or something.
I think adjudicator is a term that's coming into my head.
Yeah. Anyway, you're playing with Tassadar, and he goes and he scouts out Zeratul, and Zeratul's part of the like the dark side. Like they don't see the light of Khadun or whatever. Kala,
Light of
yeah.
Kala, yeah.
And so they're like shunned as heretics. But it turns out that the type of psychic energy that they use is extremely effective against the Cerebrits and the Overmind. So Zeratul goes on this like, I want to say like a vigilante style, like break away from the law and go and save Zeratul so that they can put an end to the Overmind, because the Zerg have attacked Aiur, their home world.
Oh yeah,
and
Tassadar. You mean you said Zeratul?
Yeah, they go to save Zeratul.
Yeah, Tassadar.
So,
wait, are we saving Tassadar or are we saving Zeratul?
We're playing as Tassadar. We're saving Zeratul. Zeratul is a Dark Templar, and Tassadar is a High Templar.
Yeah, so like the Cerebrits, they don't die by like normal means, by like missiles, explosions, whatnot. They'll always revive. And same with like the regular Protoss, like energy swords and all that. They're just essentially immune to it. The Dark Templar, though, they have like Steve was saying, they have like the special like psychic energy where like it will kill them for good, and that's why Tassadar seeks them out. But then he's labeled as like a heretic, and they try to hunt down Tassadar at one point because he's trying to like bring them into the fold pretty much, and then they don't want anything to do with the Dark Templar at all, even if it means like dying, like as a race. So basically, like Tassadar is like almost fighting 2 battles. He's trying to like save his own race, but his own race is trying to like
jail him.
Jail him, yeah.
It feels
and then
like
in the end, he flies a big giant spaceship into the Overmind.
See, there's so many like influences here. Like I feel like Terran is almost like some kind of weird pseudo Star Trek kind of like diplomacy story.
Honestly, the way I look at it is it's mainly like Terran Zerg versus Protoss, and like Terran is just kind of like off to the side, like trying to like weasel its way into the conflict.
Well, humans are always trying to push themselves into war for some reason.
And I think in the deeper narrative is like that the Zerg and the Protoss are like the two species that have been influenced by like sort of the older race that is trying to create something, and those are supposed to be like two different sides of that power. So like they are being built up to be the two that are facing off. Because also all that story just gets you to the end of the original StarCraft. You still have another 3 chapters in Brood War where it starts you off continuing with the Protoss with the concerns over a new Overmind,
Right.
and going from there, which is
Yeah.
where I'm somewhere on that chapter.
Yeah,
currently.
so like Tassadar essentially like sacrifices himself, and tries to kill the Overmind, but I don't think he succeeded 100%. So like,
he's succeeded, but remaining Zerg forces are now creating a new one.
Yeah.
And I think the second game gets to that a lot because Kerrigan is warring with other Zerg factions and taking them over, or either their commanders basically go under her mind, or she kills them and takes their brood anyway. So I think that's like the whole idea. The old Overmind is dead, and there's a new one forming. And I don't know. That kind of sounds to me like it's probably the basis for the Zerg story in Brood War. I don't know. Is it?
Yeah, no, that is the Brood War in question.
Okay. They do Brood War 2.0 in the second game.
Yeah, like essentially like at the end of Brood War, it's like the Zerg end up like essentially kind of taking over everything. But then like you play StarCraft 2 and there's like a 4-year gap, and then it just basically says that like I don't know, like the Zerg kind of got like defeated eventually, like behind the scenes, and then that's
off
how
camera.
Yeah, which is kind of corny in my opinion, but it is what it is. And then they kind of sort of like resurface eventually because Jim Raynor's like, oh, I haven't seen Zerg in a little bit. Like, what are they doing now? And then eventually Kerrigan comes back, and Kerrigan gets saved. Like she becomes human again, and then yeah, I don't want to get like so crazy into StarCraft 2, but like eventually she becomes like the Queen of Blades again, and ends up amassing her army again, and yada yada.
But she's a good guy this time.
Yeah,
I will say
essentially,
for as much story as there is to all of this and all the story modes, I still think it's somewhat crazy that like StarCraft and Brood War are now free.
Yeah.
Like, or at least that this is one of those like you don't pay with money kind of things. And I say that because you have like with a BattleNet account, you can download this for free. They have the remastered versions and everything, but like just the original game available, playable, all the missions can go on, do the online stuff. It took me 40 minutes to get BattleNet to let me sign up with an account because I failed the humanity validation test 8 or 10 times.
Oh, it's one of those recaptures where like
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a series of recaptures, and it started off with like, here's a picture of a number, here's pictures of dartboards, which one has the darts add up to that number, and I'd go through them, and for the first several, I do 8, and it's like, oh, you failed humanity validation. We don't allow bots to have accounts. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I went through 3 devices. I switched to their audio validation, which is like, which of these sounds like water? And then finally, it started throwing things at me where they're not solvable. So I ended up like, I think I filmed to them, and I'm just like, none of this adds up to the number they want. I don't know what to do here.
click all the images with a bicycle in it, and it's like one bike and one image has the very tip of a handle in it, and you're like, does that one count? That one right?
Yeah, it's like it's straight up numbers. Like I'm like, I know one of these has to add up to this. None of it does. What am I doing that isn't like a human right now?
I've been counting for 40 years. I know what it is.
It was insane. I finally I think I switched email and decided to use a phone for additional validation. I think something lowered a bar enough that it let me sign up. And then it was 15 minutes to figure out how to download it because they kind of are aiming you
Started to feel
towards buying
sorry
the
for
new
you.
stuff. But
Oh, come on. This robot's trying really hard.
Yeah,
We should just let it have an account.
StarCraft with ads.
I had gone to try to find where to torrent that game until I finally was like, wait, let's check one more time. And I was like, there we go. It's hidden off in the weird spot of like, go to this, and most of it is an ad for buy our game. The other it's like, well, it's technically for free if you click down here, which is frustrating because a portion of me picking that was I went and checked. It's like, okay, this is free, available to anyone, so there's not a cost to check this out. I didn't know that the cost would be sanity.
So I think all three of us played the remaster because Dan was nice enough to get it for us as like a Christmas present, knowing that this was coming up.
Yeah, so like I bought it for them, and then I didn't even know eventually it became free because it definitely was not free when I bought it for them.
Oh no, the remaster's not
Yeah.
free. I think you're playing the old one. So, do we know of the quality of life differences between the remaster? I mean, obviously, other than a visual overhaul, but like as far as just playing the game, is there a quality of life difference between the original and this one?
Just visuals.
Yeah, I think it's just visuals, but the visuals that they added, like, oh, they're so beautiful. Like, so if you hit F5, you can toggle between like the original graphics and then the remastered graphics. I don't know, man. It's just like I look at the original graphics, it almost gives me a headache, and it's just like I can't remember it looking that bad. I don't know if it's because I don't have like a CRT monitor or whatnot, but like I don't know if that makes a difference. But like if you play it on like the HD graphics and then you try to play it on like the original graphics, it's like it messes with your eyes. You're like, oh my god, like.
I mean, StarCraft 2 is gorgeous, so
Yeah.
I could see the step down even playing the remaster, but it was fine. I mean, I play retro games pretty much all the time, so it doesn't really bother me.
I've been good with it. So
Yeah. So you're playing the original. So we've talked about a few different functions. So there's like control groups, right, where you can hit control and a number, and then that lets you select the same group or building or whatever it is you put there. Is that in the base first game?
Yeah.
Okay. It is. Yep.
And then you can still only select 12 units, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's like the worst part about this game.
But you can still queue things up, right? Like you can make a unit do this and then that, shift click, right?
You can, yeah.
Can you? I'm not really sure if you can.
Yeah, you can select a probe, hit B, P, and then shift right-click a mineral patch, and he will run over. He will warp in your pylon and continue mining.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing because I know in StarCraft 2 it like gives you like kind of like a visual cue of like what he can do after with like the trail line.
Yeah, that's a nice upgrade for StarCraft 2.
Yeah, because I didn't realize they had it actual in the first game because like I said, there's no visual notification of him actually doing the next thing queued up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just maybe Reddit banter, but I'm finding that apparently there was a large group of pros, who insisted that Blizzard do not change anything quality of life wise with this game. When they made
between
the remaster.
1 and 2? Or the remaster?
No, with 1.
Yeah.
So when they were going to remaster 1, there were still pro players out there for StarCraft 1, not liking StarCraft 2 as much. And whatever, scene they had alive there driving revenues for StarCraft 1 were like, don't touch it. Not a thing. Don't change anything. Don't let us select all the characters. Don't let us, queue up things. Like, it's just don't change anything.
There's a lot of people like that though. Like when it comes to like games that get like remade, like because I know like with
purists.
Oh yeah, we have one here. His name is Steve. He loves Melee. Have you met him?
Because World of Warcraft was the same thing when they ended up making classic servers. There was those type of people that like do not change anything at all. So I mean, it just comes with the territory, I guess, when it comes to like doing like the classic remake or something.
Listen, in this instance, I'm glad they kept it the same. Because if I wanted to play something different, I would just boot up StarCraft 2.
See, there he is. Purist Steve right here. Yep. He didn't want to play StarCraft 1 story with better controls. He's like, no, I want to play StarCraft 1 story with the limitations of the time.
I want to play StarCraft 1 the way it was intended to be played, yeah.
Fair enough.
Does the remaster then also, because one of the things I like with this is for the missions, like you have these screens that'll have 3 or 4 spots for video of various characters talking. I'm presuming then those are those like just higher quality versions of what they had, or have they like redone those animations to
they completely
much better?
Yeah, they completely remade those animations. They're like different faces and all. And another like little tidbit that they added is they so before they go into that intermission with, like you were saying, like with the 4 screens of the people talking, they'll have like screenshots with like texts of like, for example, it will say like Zeratul like narrowly escapes with his life and he's, trying to find his brethren or whatnot. And
It
then
looks like a loading screen, like with artwork.
I know, I got so mixed up with that. I'd be sitting there like, what is this loading screen? It's been 5 minutes. Why isn't it
You
moving?
have to click.
Yeah, you have to click through the text.
So they added those too, which adds a little more story in case, you're getting lost in the story. Like it kind of like fills in a little bit of the holes, which is a nice quality of life, I guess.
Yeah, I think I saw a comment that with Brood War, they tried to get more of the story in the level playing, which was then, I think they actually drew a Final Fantasy comparison, which does not click to me, having never played Final Fantasy.
It wasn't a compliment around the 2000 era, I can tell you that. People referred to Final Fantasy X as a playable DVD at times. Just way too much story, way too many cutscenes, way too much talking, not enough gameplay. I did not like it in the rare instances in the base game where they would just stop me to listen, and I'm sitting there trying to click my workers, being like, "Get to work, guys, get to work!" Like, my pulse is up every time I play a StarCraft map. I'm just like more awake. The cutscenes though, Dan, in the remaster, you watched those too, right? You didn't just skip them.
No, I did not skip them.
Those looked terrible.
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't change
touch
them.
those, right?
They didn't
even give it a fresh coat of paint. Like I was like, this is what we're looking at. Like,
yeah,
I think initially.
Yeah, I think it's slightly like more definitive, but like it's definitely pretty like it was 1998's graphics. So
well, hang on a minute.
Yeah, same size.
Final
pixels.
Fantasy VIII's FMVs look great still. These not so much.
Yeah.
Well, so are you talking about the 8's remaster, or are you talking about...
No, just PlayStation, Final Fantasy VIII's full motion videos, like the opening cutscene type. They look great.
I haven't spun that up in quite some time, so I don't know. I'll have to give it a shot.
I mean,
Final Fantasy VIII, you were just playing it.
Right, but I was playing the remaster on the Switch, so it's hard to tell what they...
I don't know if they
fixed anything.
I don't think they updated anything on it.
I think they did. I think it's less pixelated.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is in the remaster too.
Like this is 1998, right? If Blizzard's cutscenes look like this in 1998, I can almost guarantee you the PlayStation ones looked worse.
Yeah. Well, anyway, like some of those cutscenes are pretty neat. Like the one where I don't know if you guys, I can't remember which campaign. I think it's the Zerg actually, where like the Terrans are like trying to blow up like a science vessel. It's like 4 Terran with like bombs, and they're like walking through, and then they're hearing like the Hydralisks up in like the ducks like crawling around, and they're like, "Where is it?" And then
like you're catching a raccoon or something.
Yeah. Well, they're like looking around and stuff. And then I remember this moment. This was like pivotal as a kid, like to this day. Well, obviously, like back in the day, it's like nostalgia goggles. Like everything just looked better back then. They took one of like their like scythe hands, I guess, and like pierced it through the back of his skull, and it like came out the front. So like his like face exploded. So all you see is like his skull, and it's all bloody, and he gets like dragged up. I remember seeing that as a kid. I was like, oh my god.
It was
I
very
like the one
Alien-esque, you know?
Yeah. I like the one where they're carrying the big cooler full of beer and ice, and it's actually a bomb.
Yeah, that's the cutscene I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I just saw the one on the Protoss where there's a guy up in the watchtower.
Oh yeah, the Dragoon messes up his day.
He's like, "Hey, it's a Protoss unit," and the sergeant comes out and he goes, "This better be good to get me up from my desk." And so they shoot at it. He goes, "Kill it," and they blow it up. And then the Dragoons become uninvisible, like in front of all of these Terran units or people, and the Dragoon just melts the sergeant guy right there, and you see his like skin fall off his skeletal like frame, and then his skeleton just like burst into ash.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's like a Mars Attacks type. Like,
So good.
yeah. So they're definitely fun. The videos are fun.
The Terran all have like a 4th grade education, except
They
for
do. They really do.
except for maybe the leaders. Like maybe I'd say maybe.
What you want to do, Sarge?
I think lore-wise,
They're the
it's supposed to
Confederates.
be they're all. I think they're all like prisoners.
Yeah, they're all like, that's a good way to put it. They're all like misfits, pretty much.
No, I mean straight up like they were in prison and now they're being sent out as Marines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Tychus in the second one, right? They kind of dive into that a little bit. He's in that suit, and there's all these scientists that put him in that, whatever the organization is, that put him in that suit, but he can't get out of it. Like he's stuck in that suit.
The smell. Oh my god.
Right? I mean, they don't expect you to live very long, I think is the point, right? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, he did a pretty good living.
yeah, it's pretty rare though. I mean, you throw units away in this game like they're nothing. Like you just, you're like, all right, I'm scouting. You go get like 18 Marines together, and you run into something you can't kill. They all die. You're like, all right, next.
Yeah, this is why I did not get that far. I'm a very cautious player.
Yeah,
They have families at home, damn it.
yeah. I get like emotionally attached to my first battlecruiser when it comes out and it gets shot down, and I just want to give up. Like, I went all the way and I built this tech tree to get all the way here, and it just got blown up by the first thing that it encountered.
Yeah, he's depressed for the whole day after that.
I think this is why I'm not, like, definitely not a Zerg player. Is so much of that is just like you're going to send wave after wave, and you're just going to overwhelm them, but you're going to lose a lot. I'm like, I do not do that play style well.
Yeah, Zerglings are like little puppies.
Here's what I do. Here's what I do when I play Zerg. Box A click. Box A click. Box A click. And then I go to all my hatcheries and I say click, or I highlight a hatchery and I hit R to relay my units from it right to where all my other units are going. All my hatcheries are now spewing out more things.
You just
and
keep pushing. You keep pushing. Yep.
We're all in, boys.
Yep, Zerg's
You gotta throw
always
some H's in there for some Hydras, some M's for Mutas, some Z's for Zerglings. You know how it goes.
Yeah, whatever's going on over there. Did we kill all the turrets? All right, send the Mutas in.
I love the Zerg. This is so fun.
They're pretty fun.
Yeah, it is. It's good. So I don't know. I feel like we gushed on about this game for about an hour. We could definitely go a lot more. I mean, this game is just historically very.
Yeah, I could go on forever with StarCraft, honestly.
Yeah. So, but before we let Mike go, Mike, want to tell us about what you do and where we can find more of you?
Yeah. So my main thing is the Old Switcharoo, which I co-host with Jaymo, who was on for Street Fighter 3. So he and I play. It shows he and I draw to very different games. Especially that I picked a PC game, but the Old Switcharoo, we do retro console games that are available on Nintendo Switch Online. But my roots are PC gaming. And so you can find us anywhere you find podcasts or at theoldswitcharoo.com. So when this episode goes live, our most recent episode is Mario Party for the N64.
So many blistered hands.
Oh, yeah. And destroyed controllers.
We cover the hand damage on the episode. And then
I felt it a little bit when you said it. Like I felt it right here. It kind of
not supposed to do that. They say not to do that. And then our next one will be coming up next week, which is going to be Pilot Wings from the SNES and Pilot Wings 64 from the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, they're over there doing God's work and telling you which NSO games you are supposed to play.
Yeah. And so I'm also, and most of them I also stream on Twitch at Lobaka 1977, which is LOWBACCA. So actually, we run a bit of a backlog. So right now, I am in the middle of Ocarina of Time, which we will not be releasing for about a month and a half, 2 months from now. But that is where we currently are as we work through Zelda.
Awesome.
You heard it here first. Ocarina of Time's coming.
It's
I love
it's
Ocarina
coming.
of Time.
And
Maybe
for
somebody
me,
will
it's my
pick it.
first time through them.
It's such a journey for sure. I'm hoping someone picks it for our podcast someday. That I would love to cover Ocarina of Time.
All right, so we're going to say goodbye to Mike. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will get to our review of this game.
Thanks for having me on. Look forward to
Pleasure to
seeing
have
how this does. I was nervous about this, or I thought I was picking an outside pick, and then I heard you guys talking about it at the end of the last episode, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in a lot better shape than I thought. For
I
bringing
can kind
the-
of remove myself a little bit. Like, even if I didn't play it and I didn't enjoy it, I can't be a person that's like, nah, StarCraft sucks. Like, you just can't say that.
I brought the PC real-time strategy game to the rest of the lineup you guys have had, so it was a little bit like, we'll see how this goes, and then I heard that, I was like, oh, I feel a lot better about this pick now.
Oh,
So,
it turns out that 2 out of 3 of these guys are actual real StarCraft nerds.
yeah, so that was not my intention. It has just worked out very nicely for me.
Good job,
I
sir.
look forward to seeing how this does.
We do too.
All right. Later.
Take care.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, now is about the time of the show where I tell you that if you've been listening to us for this long, you must like what you hear. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube, or hit the subscribe button on the podcast platform of your choice to get our downloads every single week. And you could also leave us a kind rating or review. It doesn't have to be 5 stars. It can just be honest. I can take critique on how to make this show better. I actually find that to be really constructive. You don't learn from winning, right, guys? That's how I learned to play StarCraft, from losing every single game I've ever played of StarCraft.
100%. Yep.
Still learning, still losing. And you could join our Discord too, which is a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun playing this week and last week. So we had a whole group of people just pop onto one of our gaming couches and hang out and play some StarCraft. We had a fight night fairly recently with the Old Switcharoo Podcast, where a bunch of us got together and we played 3 different fighting games. So, some community stuff going on. If you need that in your life, particularly if the retro game slant, come on over. It's a good time. All right, fellas, ready to review this thing?
Let's do it.
One thing we didn't get to talk about that I do want to talk about are the funny voice lines.
Oh yeah, like when you talking about like clicking the units.
Yeah, there's just so much character there.
Oh yeah.
So I have this I don't know if it's a bad habit, but like I'll select units, and then to get them to move, I'll spam the right click. Or like I'll just keep spamming A click, but like you'll see it as like 6 different clicks on the map. And when you do that, like the unit just keeps saying their line over and over and over again.
Affirmative. Go, go, go.
Yeah, affirmative, go, affirmative, affirmative. Oh my goodness. Please.
Need a light.
It's like the kind of thing, if your volume is up too loud, your parents would have told you for sure. Because they're like in the other room and you're on the computer and they're just hearing, affirmative, need a light. Let's burn, let's burn, let's burn.
Slam.
They're looking at you like, what are they
slamming?
But like, what you said is something that you just do as a tick, but you kind of have to a little bit, like especially if you're microing and you're like in a base and you run up against the fog of war and it's like your direct counter in building form. You're like, oh no, I've got to back up the other way, right? Or like if you want units to get in there and do something like attack the mineral line, you can't just A move. You have to like steer them around the buildings and right click and not let them attack.
The AI,
you gotta get back there and then attack.
The pathing is not the greatest in this.
No.
That's where I feel it was most dated. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like ramps and stuff for sure. Like choke points, like absolutely. Like I want to say, like for like Ultralisk, especially Ultralisk.
Oh,
like,
siege tanks are brutal.
Yeah, like anything that's like wide and fat, like siege tanks and Ultralisks, they have such a hard time going up the ramps, and it's usually only one at a time can go up a ramp because it's just the ramps in this game for some reason are very small.
And it's like some other stuff too is that your unit. So in StarCraft 2, I felt like I could do this thing that they call the triple M ball, but they call it the M ball because your units, the way they move in like a ball, and the
Right.
ball is deadly because the ball has all the shots firing at once, right? And that's what makes that formation effective. Think like, thinking like the Mighty Ducks flying V, like the formation is very important, right?
Quack, quack,
Yeah.
quack.
But in this game, what happened to me on multiple occasions is I would send like platoons of Marines out, and what they do is they fan out and they get into this really loose single file line and show up just in time to get murdered one after another by whatever you're trying to kill. So you really have to like stay on top of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure they
the
stay
best
together.
formation for Marines isn't a ball though; it's a concave.
Yeah, which they do rather well once they are all up on each other. But
yeah, so what you do when you micro like a big line going across your screen is you grab the first, like 6 or whatever, and you right-click them to go down, and then you grab the back ones and you right-click them to go up, so they show up in like 3 different puddles. Then when you select them all and attack, they'll naturally form a concave, but you have to know to do that, or else they're gonna walk in one by one and get massacred.
Yeah. Just get killed.
You definitely have to do some microing in the first game. I would say even more than the second game, because the second game just has so many quality of life features that, like, as you were saying, like, you have to do that concave thing. Otherwise, if you don't micro, like, your units are just going to get melted, unfortunately.
That to me was where it felt most dated.
Yeah, because a lot of the time it's like they don't move in a ball. It's like they almost do like a single file line as like they go to the enemy.
But like weird. So like what would happen, especially with the ramps, right? Like I'd be trying to send a line of siege tanks to a rally point, right? And because they're so wide and fat, you do want them to single file, and for some reason they just won't, right? So they're all clustering around the ramp and doing, God knows what 3-point turns, whatever. You're like, what is happening over here? And then one of them just gives up and just goes somewhere else. Like it's still trying to get where it's going, but there's no other ramp, right? Like you're trying to ramp up onto a plateau, so you have like higher vision. And then like one of them just gives up. He's like he's off like halfway across the map, still trying to get to where you told him to go, and he's getting like blown up by other things because he just ran into the wrong neighborhood doing whatever.
Yeah, you're trying to get your tanks up the hill, and you just hear your army's under attack.
It's like, dude, why are you way up there?
You're like, wait, what do you mean 1, 2, 3? Oh man.
Yeah, so like with the Ultralist, in my opinion, they're kind of like Zerglings in a way, like just like a lot bigger Zerglings, because if you have a bunch of them, they can try and get the surround on something and like really destroy stuff because they're really strong. But the problem is, it's like they're so big that it's like a lot of the time they can't get the surround on something because buildings are like too close together that like this thing like will circle the whole base just to get on the other side of the building that they're trying to get the surround on. And it's like, bro, what are you doing?
So in the so I watched a couple of tier lists, right, to rank units to figure out like what I should be building, and it seems to be unanimously agreed that the Ultralisk is really, really bad. Like, so in this game, it doesn't even cleave.
Instead.
Remember, Dan, I told you it cleaves and it does splash damage? No, that's a StarCraft 2 thing. In this game, it's a single target, like melee unit. And yes, your Zerglings do out DPS it. Like, 3 Zerglings will out DPS it very quickly. Like, and they say it's there to draw fire. Like, it's there to draw fire for the Zerglings.
It's just a tank. That's all it is. And I've tried to mass like produce Ultralisk in some of the missions, and yes, it did work on occasion, but it's just like a lot of the time they're not swinging because it's like they're trying to get to something that they can't fit through, and it just doesn't work. Like siege tanks are a different story because they're ranged, so it's like, they might not be able to fit in like tight spots, but at least they can shoot and siege up and like,
it's not what they're supposed to do, right? Like they're supposed to push lines up.
Yeah.
Right? Like you take an area, then your siege tanks layer in and stop there and start demolishing, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's not how I use my siege
tank.
tank.
It's just like
you can't just send them in. They're not great.
Try to
that.
picture.
I didn't do that. I like setting my siege tanks up and then going up and shooting a couple things and then running away and baiting them into the fire.
That works too.
That's what I did.
Yeah, just like try to imagine like the tank being just a melee unit. Like how shitty that would be. Like That's basically what the Ultralisk is.
I don't know what Ultralisks cost, but I know what battle cruisers cost. And Ultralisks are supposed to be the top of the tree.
Yeah.
It's probably like 300 and
I think
like
it's
50.
I think it's 300 minerals and 200 gas.
Yeah,
for
no,
an
you're
Ultralisk.
spending that for a bullet sponge, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it's
It's
not great.
You could get so much more mileage out of, like, with the same amount of cost with Zerglings and Hydralisks.
Yeah, so like Zerglings are 50 apiece, and then Hydralisks are like 100.
There's
100
there's
minerals,
70.
or 150 minerals and 50 gas. 50
No,
gas
there's 75 minerals and 25 gas in StarCraft 1.
There's actually
Yeah.
really interesting things, too. There's damage types, which I don't think is something that they tell you, or maybe they do, but you'd have to know what it means. Maybe you'd have to read the manual or whatever. But like, there's explosive and concussive damage at the very least that they talk about in the tier list. So concussive damage is really good against units that are considered to be small, which are not exactly spelled out. So like Mutalisks are small. So explosive damage deals less damage to small targets, but better damage, or I could have it backwards too, between concussive and explosive, but suffice to say, so like Mutalisks being small are literally really good against, like, or they take less damage from missile turrets.
Yeah.
That do explosive damage, but more damage from Marines, basically, that do
so
concussive
like
damage.
To put it into perspective, I think is like, so ghosts are like an infantry unit that's on the Terrans, and they have like this kind of like shotgun
Sniper rifle.
Yeah, it's like a shotgun / sniper rifle type thing, and I'm pretty sure it does concussive damage. And if you have a lot of ghosts trying to shoot down a siege tank, it's very slow. Like, just to put into perspective, like, you want to like use explosive damage on like an armored target like siege tanks in most cases. I don't even know what Marines is considered as, because they're like good against everything, I feel like.
I think it's quantity. I mean, there's a certain point where these damage calcs don't matter, and you have to figure too that the Marine damage is so low. You know, you're not really losing much per hit, right?
Yeah.
So it matters more when you're supposed to be doing like 20 per hit and you end up doing like 15.
Right.
Like,
and like the stim packs on top of it too. Like, I love the Marine.
The two things that I'm missing in this compared to StarCraft 2, and I think Dan is on the same page as me, is the first one is only being able to select 12 units.
Yeah.
And the other one is I really miss my F2 key.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What does F2 do?
Select all army.
Yeah, so any attacking unit that you have on the map, if you hit F2, no matter where it is on the map on StarCraft 2, it'll be selected. So you can just hit F2 and then just do, A attack, and then they'll just all converge in that one spot, no matter where they are on the map.
Yeah.
I think unless you're a diehard RTS player, though, I feel like this game is very playable.
Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Like you can do a lot to mitigate this, right? Like, you can only select 12 units, sure, but you can also make control groups, right? And you can set
100%.
rally points. So you don't really have to do it. And in this game, the units are smart enough that once they stop walking, they start guarding, and they actually attack. So like when you set rally points, like Steve was saying earlier, when he's Zerg, he pushes, he pushes and he builds new units into the zone that he's pushing. I mean, I was doing similar things, right? Like if I had wave 1 of Marines and they really managed to clean up a lot of enemies but didn't quite tip it over, I would in the meantime be building more, but my rally point would be just outside the battlefield. And by the time that initial wave got done, the second wave would be like already there and ready to go, right? Or maybe it was Marines and Ghosts or whatever the counter was I needed, right? So there's a lot you can do to kind of mitigate that 12 unit selection problem, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I guess, is not as bad, but I like having control groups of as many units in it as I want. Like, going from that and then going backwards is harder. If I finish this and decide to start playing some StarCraft 2 again, it'll be a welcomed change. The other thing that I didn't mention was in this game, you can't control group like buildings,
Yeah.
which is really bad. Or not bad, but it's like really difficult because now you don't only have so many control groups you can have. You can have 10. And like if you have 6 barracks, you have to select each barracks and then create your units out of those barracks separately. But in StarCraft 2, you can double click on your barracks, and every barracks that's on the screen will highlight at the same time, which you can do for units in up to 12 in this game. But in StarCraft 2, you can put all of those 6 barracks on one control key. So you just hit 6, and then you hold the M button down, and it'll build you 6 times 5, 30 Marines. So
you
it's
gotta
something
kind of
that
order them up like one after another on this game.
Yeah, StarCraft 2 is full of quality of life changes. It's like, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, it's just a direct upgrade from the first game.
Which was kind of what I was alluding to. Like, this game is awesome. StarCraft 2 kind of did it better. So.
Well, it should. I mean,
It should.
right? That's where a sequel. What? How many years later it came out? Was the first installment like 2012 or something like that? You know, we're talking like 14 years later, 14, 15 years.
Yeah,
later.
I think it was 12. It came out in 2010, so it was 12 years.
And I'm happy they didn't miss the mark on it. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
really sucks when you get a sequel that you've been waiting for and it's not better than what you were playing before. Right? It's frustrating.
It's depressing. Yeah, absolutely.
But they're I don't want to speak too highly of Blizzard, given how they went out ultimately. But there was a lot of passion on those teams, once upon a time.
Yeah.
Right. And they did a lot of listening to their player base to create great games.
I guess my point is that. Well, I'll let Dan go. I'll save this for.
I was gonna say, if they ever do a StarCraft 3 like down the line, I'm not even sure if we'll get like, the product that we all want, because it's just like, I don't know if these people are still here with Blizzard, so it's like, I don't know if it's just like a kind of like a forgotten dream at this point. I really don't know.
I don't know, Microsoft owns it now, but it is a very high, grossing. I'd be curious to see what is the highest grossing Blizzard franchise.
Well, because I don't.
It's probably StarCraft.
It's got to be World of Warcraft.
I know.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, because I know in a lot of people's eyes, like StarCraft 2 is like the perfect RTS. So a lot of people like don't fix what's not broken kind of thing. So like, I don't know. We might not even see a StarCraft 3. Who knows?
I mean, I don't think StarCraft 2 is in such a place where it's fair to say, don't play StarCraft 1. Like, if you want to experience the storyline, if you want to play as a new player, which is like, I can't even imagine, but if you want to turn around and pick up a StarCraft hobby and start playing StarCraft on a somewhat competitive level, yeah, sure, don't play the first one for that. But if you want to go and play it and experience the storyline, I don't think StarCraft 2 is like a substitute, right?
No, absolutely not. Like, StarCraft is definitely worth playing on its own for sure. But yeah, it's just like, I just love the whole universe of StarCraft. I was telling Steve the other night that like I would even play like a third person game that was like in the StarCraft universe because I like it that much.
You mean StarCraft Ghost, the game that never came out?
Yeah, I would love something like that, dude. I don't know. Like, the RT version of StarCraft is perfect. Don't get me wrong, but I just love the Protoss. I love the Zerg. I love the Terran. I would definitely play a 3D adaptation of this universe for sure.
So I don't know if it's just rumored, but I think Blizzard wanted to make a game like loosely based on the Warhammer universe, and Warhammer said no, and then they ended up making StarCraft because in Warhammer you have Space Marines, and you have they're called Tyranids, but they're the bugs. They're just like Zerg, and so like, it's so similar in a lot of ways, but I don't know if it's necessarily directly built off of that. But that's just a rumor that I had heard. But it's kind of interesting.
I thought Space Marine was a StarCraft title the first time I ever saw it because the similarities in their designs are so like overt. Right? Like,
I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but this is a Tyranid warrior.
Yeah, which is the Warhammer universe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally like a Zerg. Almost like a roach from Zerg, StarCraft 2.
Yeah, I could see it. Oh yeah, that reminds me. I ended up getting these two bad boys in the mail because I used to have these as a kid, and I probably lost them in a move or something, but I don't know if you guys can see it, but the Prima guides. I remember
Is that sealed?
this one's sealed, yeah. This
How
one
much did that run you?
Honestly not much. I think this was 20 and this was 15.
That's probably privately sealed, not.
Yeah, I don't think it's factory sealed.
Yeah.
But I remember reading those as a kid, like one summer vacation. Yeah, I ended up losing them along the way, so I was like excited to buy those because we were playing, StarCraft these past 2 weeks. I was like, I wonder if I can still get these on Amazon. And sure enough, I was able to, so I picked them up.
It's pretty cool.
I'm curious to learn some Dan lore here. Dan, how big of a StarCraft fan are you exactly? Because I didn't know this about you either.
Yeah, so like I said, I started in 5th grade. I saw the kid playing it, and I fell in love with it. I remember asking my dad, like, "Oh, can we get this for your computer?" Like, I remember I kept asking and asking and asking, and eventually he got it for me. And yeah, there was times where I just played it nonstop for like a couple of years. I never got like into the competitive scene. I always played like the single player campaign, and I was huge into the campaign editor where you could make your own maps and stuff. And like I remember making this like doing the biggest map layout and just making a huge maze. And obviously it wasn't practical for like a multiplayer map, but like yeah, I remember I spent like weeks making that thing. And I don't know. I just to this day, like I remember StarCraft 2 getting announced and getting super excited for it. And I don't know. Like as the years go by, I haven't been playing much of StarCraft, but since these past 2 weeks, I've played all of the campaign and Brood War because I've already played it once before, so like I went through it pretty handily. But then I was still hooked, so I went to StarCraft 2's campaign, and I'm now playing that again, and I'm just having so much fun. Like I just really love the StarCraft 2 campaign, like with all like the various upgrades, the mini story intermissions that you can do, that you can click on, like the different conversations you can have. It's such a well done game.
My favorite memory of playing StarCraft 2 was with Dan. We were doing 2v2s on the ranked ladder, and I was playing Zerg and he was playing Terran, and we found build orders for both to like have a timing attack at 7 minutes, like exactly, and we mastered the timing push build orders so that we could storm one of the two people's bases with a timing attack that lined up together so well and crushing one opponent, and then it was 2v1.
Oh yeah, we got all the way up into platinum doing that. It was funny.
Simple little tricks.
But what was funny though is like the people who were like actually competent and could like actually stop it, and then me and Steve would be like, all right, what do we do now?
Well, because when you do these
2v1,
well, their buddy would come out and help, but like
I was gonna say, you know that's a problem.
But it was the funny part was that when like I said, you got competent people and they would stop that rush. At that point, it's like Steve and I like trying to scramble, trying to like, okay, we got to actually play normal now.
Yeah, we had to transform our economy into something reasonable, and by then it's like,
yeah, like
we're on defense now.
Yeah, like a lot of the time is like if your initial rush does not work, you're kind of at a disadvantage now.
Well, yeah, you're gonna get cracked back with.
It's not only that; it's because it's like you devoted all your resources to that, and it didn't work. So now it's like you kind of have to take a step back and like, try a different plan. And by then, it's like they're already on a set plan, and you're trying to reroute like a different plan. But sometimes we would win.
The main thing is that if you don't do enough damage to their economy, they have built a stronger economy. It's not necessarily the crackback that's going to get you. They are going to be ahead of you for the rest of the game. You're playing catch up. You don't necessarily lose immediately when your timing attacks don't work, but if you don't support it back home with your economy, then it's going to be an uphill battle the whole game.
Right. And we were like really efficient at that, like that rush attack. So it's like, if that didn't work, then not to say that we were like bad, but like, we like really were good at that. So it's like, we kind of had to play normally, which the skill ceiling, when you're playing normal StarCraft is so freaking high.
I think they're still searching for it.
Yeah.
That ceiling is still up there somewhere. Far from a solved game. So one more story before we get to rating this game, because we did it once during the gaming sins question ever so long ago, but I want to hear Dan's story about how he and our other friend Matt invented Among Us long before that was actually
we didn't technically invent it. This was already in the game, and I mentioned this briefly in a previous episode, but basically, so they had this like custom map online. It was called 7v1 Comstomp. So basically what it was is it was 7 human players versus 1 computer player. And the whole idea of this map was to just crush this computer player, and it would count as a victory on your stats. So it's basically like padding your win rate. But what a lot of people would do is basically you guys would all allegiant up in the beginning, so you can see everyone's like vision and all that, and everyone's all allegiant. And as soon as like before you kill like the last building of the computer, someone would untick the allegiance button. So when you kill that last building on the computer, the game's supposed to end because you're all aligned. But when someone unclicks that button, the game doesn't end because now the game still thinks that there's an enemy on the field somewhere, and there was no easy way to tell who it was. So
didn't they lose vision on you though?
So they had 2 separate buttons. They had one for vision and one for allegiance. You could actually keep the vision button on, but unclick the allegiance button. So the term was called backstabbing, which a lot of people abbreviated to BSing. So as soon as you kill like that last computer building, people would be like, okay, who's BSing? Because it's like the game didn't end. So now it's like you got people pointing fingers at each other, being like, I think it's this guy. He's definitely he's building up all these cannons and stuff, like it's gotta be him. And a lot of the time it's like people would be blowing each other up and completely take him out of the game, and the game still wouldn't end. So it wasn't him. So it's like
see, it's Among Us. That's what it is. It's the same exact game, just way beforehand. So we got MOBAs and we have Among Us. StarCraft, created that genre.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like Matt and I would do that a decent amount of times, like be the backstabbers. But there was your fair share of other people doing it. Trust me.
Just trolls.
I mean, I play that every time I play a board game ever, and now my friends don't trust me, so I can't play Among Us either because they kill me no matter what.
I've actually never played Among Us, but like, what if you just outright and say, yeah, it's me? Wouldn't people think you're like bullshitting?
How often do you say that is the question.
That's what I would be like.
They just yeet me out of safety because they know. They know.
It's good stuff.
I don't know who it is, but we got to get rid of Don first, just in case. I don't believe anything he says. All right, you guys ready to rate this thing? This is a doozy. This is a tough one to rate. Alrighty, this is the part of the show where we take the game to the league, and what you see before you looks like a tier list, but it is not. It is actually a list of cups. And why is that? Because not every game is created equal. We can't just simply compare games across genres and expect them all to hold up against each other. There are masterpiece level games that I think everyone can unanimously agree are extremely influential and have shaped the gaming landscape that we have today, and everybody unanimously loves, right? Think like, I don't know, guys, give me an example. What's like one of the best games ever that, you can't believe somebody could possibly hate?
Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Metroid, Super Metroid, Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, exactly. But we want to have space for people to pick their favorite games and some hipstery level games. So we have the patented cup system. So the what we're doing is all year long, we're taking games and we're sorting them into cups. And we're going to play 25 games throughout the year, and we're going to have 5 cups. So that's 5 cups, 5 games each, ranging all the way up, because we're a Pokemon-scented podcast, from Apricorn all the way up to Master Ball, pseudo Pokemon Stadium style. And there will be prizes associated with each. So once we're done sorting them into cups, we will call a vote, and where our audience will be able to tell us in each cup which are their favorite games, and we'll give some prizes to the winners. And we might have some more surprises along, making shifty eyes. All right, so that in mind, this is game number 12. So that is 12 games. We have 2 completed cups. I say completed, but a new game can enter either at the top cup or at the bottom cup. And if the latter happens, we'll have to shift games around and move things up. And that's kind of where things get exciting. So StarCraft, inclusive of Brood War, I would just like to say I think it could go straight in Great Ball tier. It might not be my favorite game on the list, but it's, it's like extremely good.
It's same for me. I'm gonna windmill slam that into Great Ball. I don't need a second pick.
My second pick is Donkey Kong Country because Jaymo beat us all in Fight Night, and I'm still not very happy about it. So
Well, my first pick is my own. No, I'm just kidding. Looking at all these games here, I would say that I will easily have put the most hours into StarCraft. So that by default makes it the best, right?
If you think it is, it's totally your opinion.
I think it goes into Great Ball as well.
yeah, I think if Master Ball were here, I would probably not have too hard of a time putting it into that spot. I know that might be spoiling it a little, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think it definitely starts at the top.
Cool.
Well, that was easier than I like it to be. Can we just argue about something else? What were we arguing at before the show, Steve? And I said pause it and we'll argue about it on the show.
I think it was talking about Warhammer potentially being linked.
Oh, yeah. I don't know anything about that. Warhammer's so deep. All right, so we are going to so before we set StarCraft aside, did we have any reviews this week? What can you say about it, really? Nope, we just had Mike reviewing his own game that said, I didn't craft a single star when playing this. 0 stars.
It's a good one.
Very, very good. So we're going to set StarCraft aside, and our next guest is Hapney.
Finally.
Yep, finally. And he is bringing us an N64 favorite of his, and a game that I'm sure I played amongst the myriad of wrestling titles for the N64. But he's bringing us WCW versus the NWO for the N64.
Oh boy, that's funny.
So we're going to get wrestling on next episode, boys.
Prepare for the steel chair.
We're going to have to do the episode all of us with our shirts off.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to just work out and slap myself before the episode.
I'm going to have
to get myself amped up.
I'm going to have the black paint under my eyes and look like the Undertaker.
Can I do the full red cane face? Like the striped red and black. Was he WCW?
I don't know the divisions, man.
You're gonna have to paint your face as Sting, but wear a Sting mask. So when you take the Sting mask off, it's still Sting face.
All right, we gotta have some fun with this one. Yeah, this is gonna be a good time. So find a way to play WCW versus NWO, preferably one that involves being on our Discord, and we'll figure out a way to play multiplayer and whack each other with ladders and chairs. And we will see you in 2 weeks on the next episode. Game over, fellas?
Game over.
Game over.